The old man walked into the secondhand store, the wind howling outside as the doorbell jingled. The smell of aged leather and dust filled the air. His eyes scanned the shelves, but then something caught his attention. In the far corner of the store hung a worn brown coat. The moment he saw it, his heart skipped a beat. He slowly approached, drawn to it as though some invisible force was pulling him closer. He reached out and gently touched the fabric, his fingers tracing over the faded material, his breath catching in his throat. The coat was oddly familiar. There, stitched into the collar, was a name, J. Miller. He froze. His mind raced, trying to piece it together. This couldn't be. Was this really his coat? He couldn't believe it. The memories came rushing back. The cold winters, the desperate days when he had nothing, not even enough money for food. That coat had kept him alive, wrapped around him like a shield against the brutal world. He took a deep breath and whispered, "This was mine." The young shopkeeper, who had been sorting through some old books, looked up and noticed the man's reaction. "Is something wrong, sir?" she asked. The old man didn't answer immediately. His hand still gripped the coat, his eyes lost in thought. I had this coat many years ago," he said slowly, his voice hoarse with emotion. The shopkeeper raised an eyebrow. "You know this coat?" He nodded. "It was mine when I was younger, when things were hard." His voice faltered as he spoke. I sold it. I had no choice. I thought I could never get back on my feet, and I sold it to survive." She was quiet for a moment. "That's strange," she said, walking over to the coat. "We've had it in the shop for a long time. It came in with a bunch of other things from a storage cleanout. I wonder how it ended up here." The old man's mind was racing. How could this coat end up here, after all these years? He looked at the shopkeeper, his voice barely above a whisper. Where's your family from?" The shopkeeper hesitated, her face softening. "My family? We used to live in the East End. My grandfather, he used to tell me stories about his tough days. He was poor, struggling to survive, just like you, probably worse. He used to say this coat helped him survive one of the worst winters of his life." The old man's eyes widened in shock. "Your grandfather? What was his name?" he asked, his voice trembling. She smiled softly, lost in the memory. "Henry Miller. He always spoke about how this coat saved his life." The old man's heart stopped. The name, Henry Miller, echoed in his mind like a thunderclap. He felt the room spin for a moment. Then, slowly, he whispered, "That was me. I sold it to him. I never thought it would matter to anyone else." The shopkeeper blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" With a shaky hand, the old man held up the coat, his eyes filled with emotion. "That coat was mine. I sold it years ago when I had nothing, just to survive. But it saved your grandfather. He said it helped him live." Her eyes widened in realization. "Oh my God, that was your coat." Her voice quivered with awe. "That coat, my grandfather said it was the reason he made it through that winter." The old man lowered his head, holding the coat close to his chest, as though it might slip away again. "I had no idea. I sold it without thinking. But it gave him a chance just like it gave me one." His voice broke with emotion. The shopkeeper's eyes filled with tears as she looked at him. "If my grandfather were still here, he would thank you. He always said it was the best gift anyone had ever given him." The old man gave a quiet smile, his eyes moist with tears. "Some things, they never really get lost, do they?" he said softly, his voice full of quiet wisdom. As the sunlight filtered through the store windows, casting a warm glow over the coat and the two of them, it felt as if time itself had paused, allowing the past and present to merge in a single moment of unexpected connection. The coat, once a symbol of hardship, now stood as a testament to the simple, powerful kindness that had made its way across generations.